Hi, folks. We've been all around the world today, inner world, outer world. Welcome to the exotic world of Hollywood. As people have shared today that, TED, Ideas Worth Sharing, I think Hollywood, we're sort of in the business of ideas worth sharing. I admit, anyone in Hollywood would probably admit as well, that not everything is worth sharing, but we're all in the pursuit of bringing ideas forward and actually how do we make a business out of it. And I think it's a combination in Hollywood of the creators and the leaders and managers who make it work. So that's sort of my passion and interest and specialty is Hollywood leadership. So our topic is leadership lessons from Hollywood, how to manage and motivate creative professionals and teams. And my goal is also to show you a little bit about what happens in Hollywood and find a way to bring it to a little piece that you can take home for yourself today. So yeah, people laugh a lot when I talk about the idea of Hollywood leadership as if this is such a ridiculous thing because we don't really see Hollywood leaders, although we only see them when they pretty much screw up or when they make big money or when they win an award of some sort. So the best Hollywood leaders, and probably the best leaders in any world, are somewhat invisible, somewhat behind the scenes. They're empowering other people to do their best. It's not they're doing nothing, which is we don't really see them that much. So just my company's Hollywood Coaching. I'm an executive coach, leadership coach, work with Hollywood studios and all kinds of creative companies and teams. And I've been on both sides of this equation. I've been a filmmaker and I'm a musician and a songwriter. And I've also led creative teams of people actually making stuff. And I've also been on the executive side where we've been supervising people that are making stuff. So we're going to talk a little bit about the details of that. So I've been on both sides of the equation. So yeah, Hollywood leadership, does it exist? There's a way where in my photo of Yoda here, you see Yoda in a battle pose. He's really being a warrior, right? What is the warrior archetype? The warrior archetype is the protector of boundaries. It's the boundaries of time and space and budget and schedule. So but how do we handle those boundaries? It's not about always being at the border with a gun and saying, if you cross this line, that's it. There's negotiation involved, especially with creative people and creative business and creation. So the creative leader has to do a special job of creating birth and creating new projects and creating new energy while also holding the boundaries of time and space and money. So let me just back up with what do we mean by Hollywood? And I like to say there are three Hollywoods, three uses of the term. One is there's the neighborhood, right? So originally it was called Hollywoodland. It was a real estate area in the north of Los Angeles. And they put up the famous Hollywood sign with the new word Hollywoodland. At a certain point, those four letters, land, fell off. And I think it was one of the first creative business decisions in Hollywood. Like, do we pay to redo that thing or not? And someone said, I guess I like Hollywood like that. It's an even better idea. So there's the neighborhood. That's why Hollywood's called Hollywood. Then there's what I call the industry. This is a workplace where people go to work. People get jobs. And it started in Hollywood, in the neighborhood, at the studios like this. But it really, for me, it's anywhere where people are making films, making television, making new media, things like that. So it has expanded beyond the confines of just that neighborhood, but we sort of bring that orientation with us. And so that's the industry side. But the third Hollywood is what I call the mythical mind space. This is the part within us all that's almost like, it's the collective unconscious, as Jung would say, in a way. It's the place where we've all seen the Star Wars movies, we've all seen The Godfather, we've all seen Mary Poppins. All these movies, they're dancing around in our brains. It's a shared experience of all people around the world. And they inspire us, and they just float as ideas. And it's just an amazing shared experience. So people are motivated to be in that business of create. They're motivated by their own mythical mind space experience. And then they're also getting into the business of doing that stuff. So what motivates people to leave their safe homes and safe careers and live their passion and take huge risks to do something that's really important? You know, sometimes people think initially maybe it's about the money, right? Because we hear about the big budgets, we hear about the box office grosses, we hear about star salaries. It's easy to point to that stuff and go, well, that must be the reason, but it's really pretty much not. And there's a great quote from Walt Disney, the man who created Walt Disney Studios. He said, "We don't make movies to make money. We make money to make movies." So it started, and Walt Disney, we know Walt Disney Studios is a big organization now, but he was an animator. He drew. He worked really closely with the people that were making stuff. And he knew that was it. And that's really, any filmmaker, any creative person knows that it's really about that. And, you know, sometimes people think it's about success. And Gary Shandling, a successful actor, writer, comic, said, I heard him on a podcast recently, he said, "I've had enough success to know that if I were driven by success, I would be happy." So we don't really know if Gary will ever be happy. But we know he's had enough success to kind of see it this way and to get the clarity that that was sort of the case. So I think it's an internal motivation, right? So David Whyte, the poet and writer, has said this about the purpose of art. Art is the act of triggering deep memories of what it means to be fully human. I'm just going to say that again. Art is the act of triggering deep memories of what it means to be fully human. So I think artists, writers, are motivated by that, see that, can feel that, and it's part of the human experience. That's the motivation to do that, basically. So it's an internal motivation. It's not external money and fame. And I think that the creative soul is everywhere. Last year, I was speaking in Scandinavia, northern Finland and Sweden, and I got to meet a lot of filmmakers and TV people. And what I said to my LA friends when I got back to town was, you know, they're just like us, but they're a million miles away. It's the creative soul of the creator, of the filmmakers, of the writers, exactly like people in Hollywood. And I think that creative soul exists in Hollywood, exists in High Point, it exists in Helsinki. It's all over the world, and somehow the creative imperative is the same in the people that have that. So I've seen it everywhere. So I want to define what I mean by creative leadership. And I'm generally not talking about the people that own the studios at this point, because that's become its own weird ecosystem. But on a creative project, there will be a team of creative people, let's say filmmakers, let's say artists, actors, writers. So there's the initial team of creative people, right? And then there's a creative leader within that manages the creative people. That person probably was a writer. So in a TV writer's room, maybe there's 8 or 10 people writing an episode of TV, and one person who's the head writer, showrunner, and that person is a writer, but they've sort of stepped into a leadership position rather. So there's the creative people, the creative leaders, and then there's what I call the creative executives. And the creative executives are people who are not necessarily hands-on creators. They're not artists, they're not writers, but they have a sense of financial management to oversee the process. And creative executives come in when we're trying to make a business out of our creativity. We're not just going, hey, let's make a movie, hey, let's make a show. They're saying, this is a business, we have a contract, we have to make incredible creativity on this budget, on this schedule. And it's the creative executives who have to both balance the money and the creativity. And that's the sort of the special thing that it's not just in Hollywood, but we're going to pull it out of there. So the business challenge for creative leaders is how do we lead them, how do we motivate them, and how do we manage them? You know, and sometimes people say, well, managing creatives is like herding cats. But I think it's not really, unless you mean like the lions, tigers, kings and queens of the jungle. These are really high-functioning people that are really tough and really strong, and they're at the top of their game to have gotten to that position. And they're not going to be pushed around easily. And they're also not going to move until they feel inspired to move. They're not going to move until they've done something that makes sense for them. So a creative leader has to give them enough space and enough structure, and that's what we're going to come back to. But back to the internally motivated thing, there's this quote that I like to talk about, allegedly from the Gnostic Gospels, which goes like this: if you give birth to the genius within you, it will free you. If you do not give birth to the genius within you, it will destroy you. So we are creators at any level are motivated by living our passion, and if we don't, just like the video we just saw, there's this sort of little mini death that occurs. So it's taking that risk, it's living that passion that people in the creative industries know, even though it's ephemeral, even though it's hard to identify sometimes. So we're going to talk about the specifics of Paul Haggis's journey. Paul Haggis, he was a successful TV writer. He wrote the screenplay for $1 Million Baby, and on that success, he got to make a movie called Crash. So he worked for years on that film. Worked for years on writing the script. Then he worked for years raising the money, he and his producer, Kathy Schulman. And then, in the middle of shooting a film usually takes, let's say, 30 to 50 days. In the middle of shooting, he had a heart attack. So he had worked for years on this project, and he was shooting his project, shooting his dream project, and he had a heart attack. So they stopped production. The doctor says, Paul, you got a weak heart, you had a heart attack, I really need you to take a few months off and get someone else to finish the movie for you, because I don't think it's bad for your health. And Paul said, you don't understand. If I don't finish this movie, then I will surely die. If I don't finish this movie, I will surely die. So that really speaks to how important it was, how life-giving it is for him to just continue with his dream project, right? So as creative leaders, how do you manage somebody like that? Right? They're going to put their life on the line for a creative project. There's nothing you can say that's really going to change things. I mean, there are places where you can always fire somebody, and everyone's replaceable on one level, but if we want to work with the best and the brightest who are highly motivated, highly talented, highly successful, how do we manage people like that? Kathy Schulman, who was the producer of that film, I heard her on a panel once, and someone asked her, how did you get so many great actors to be in this movie for almost no money? Because Kathy was saying they'd all work for low-budget union scale. She said, look, these people, they got into movies, they came to Hollywood to act, to work with other actors, to tell great stories at the height of their game. They did not come here to Hollywood to work on an action movie in front of a green screen. Working in front of a green screen, that's their day job. That's what they do to keep going, to pay their mortgages, to pay for whatever their expenses are, but they will go back and forth between maybe a big Hollywood studio movie and an independent movie, because that's where their passion really is. So let's talk about what creators need and what executives and creative leaders can give them. I mentioned it's structure on one hand. It's how do we form structure for the creative process. And we want the right balance of freedom and structure. So there's some little tools that I use in my coaching practice that I use with all kinds of people, and it's really basic. How do you manage basic accountability? So there are 3 questions of accountability. What will you do? When will you do it? And how will I know? So this works with any little thing, any project, but if I'm working with a screenwriter, I'll say, well, you're going to write 10 pages and in 7 days, and how are you going to let me know? So it's very specific of what exactly you're going to do, and what is the specific date with which it will be due, and what is the notification process. We're creating a feedback and accountability loop. So on one hand, it has to be very sharp and finely focused, so everybody knows exactly what's going on and exactly what's expected of them. However, it doesn't always work that way, but that's okay, because the 4th question is, what did you learn from the process? So if people, maybe they'll come to me on Saturday and say, well, I forgot to get back to you, or I'm sorry, or I worked all night, or whatever it was, we might have found that it was a harder project than we thought. It might have been easier. I might need more resources. It might be I don't like my idea. There's so many things that we could have discovered from that it was important for me to set up a really solid, clear accountability in setting the task, and then let them go away for a certain period of time. And then when they come back, I'm more focused on what did you learn, because there are many weeks to go in this process, right? There's going to be an iterative process of learning and getting better and getting smarter. And the creative people will be looking for new ways to try things, and they might go, there's so many things we can learn, but as a creative leader, we have to keep the space open for that to happen. We can't just expect that everyone's going to do exactly what we said. And that's really the sort of the funny balance. The other thing we really need is trust. And trust is a funny thing as well. And, people just say sometimes, oh, just trust me. I'm trustworthy. But what that really, the rubber meets the road on that is in this case, you have to trust the creative process. You have to trust that a creative person might go down a road that's not going to work, and that that's okay, that they couldn't know. They might think the way to solve the problem is this way, it's going to end up being that way. So we have to be able to trust that the process works and that the person is on it in a certain kind of way. And the only way that you as an executive or a creative leader or manager will be able to have credibility with your creator is if you give them enough rope to experiment, enough room to experiment, and also if they know you're going to fight for them, that you believe in what they believe in. So if you believe in a creative project like Paul Haggis did, or any great creative project has somebody fighting for the creator. And it's the producer's job and the creative leader's job not just to say, gee, you're over schedule, over budget, to say, look, I really believe in this thing, but by the way, we have to wrap this thing up soon. Or we're running out of money, or what do you want to do? How do you want to solve this together? It's not about just saying no, because again, these sort of kings and queens of the jungle know that there's no show without them, but they want a partner that believes in the process and that believes in them to work together with them. Just here's a Paul and Kathy finished the movie, won some Oscars, Best Picture Oscar, Best Screenplay Oscar. So after all that, we get to see yes. There they are winning their Oscar at the Academy Awards. So it happens that way, but there was a lot of literally heart attacks on this on this project. So just to go back to, I think of creative leaders as creative warriors. It's where we have to both be a wise person like Yoda and maybe we talk in funny sentences like Yoda, but we're all holding the boundary of time, of space, of trust, and creation. So, I guess I invite you to all bring your own creative warrior to anything you're doing, to a film project you're doing, or a creative project, or a family project you're doing, or a cooking project. There's a certain place where you're going to know what's in the recipe, and there's a certain place where you go, wow, we're out of raisins. Let's try cranberries, Let the experimentation occur, and do as much preparation as you can do, but be really open to the process. So I invite you to take your creative warrior at home, and thanks for being here.